Welcome to Drawsh Studio. Today we're going to talk about how to make accurate observations using sighting. Let's get started. Sighting is a method of getting information from life that we apply to our drawing to make it more accurate. To do sighting, we hold our pencil or a long stick outstretched in our hand and use it as a device to gather information. When we use sighting, we need to keep our arm stretched to its fullest. If we bend our arm, the observations we make will be slightly different each time we use sighting. Instead, we need to keep our elbow locked when we are sighting. This will keep the information consistent each time we look. We also need to close one eye when we use sighting. If both eyes are open, we will get double vision and we won't be able to get clear measurements. Closing one eye gives us a single image we can easily get information from. When we get this information, we need to apply it to our drawing. Once we have an observation, we bring our arm down and make corrections on our drawing until it is accurate to what we see in life. This process is all about making changes, so don't get discouraged if it takes some time and effort to make it work. Sighting allows us to gather a lot of different information. We can measure proportion and scale, check alignments and angles, and understand negative space and negative shapes. It's best to get the proportion of one object correct first, then use that to make other observations. You can use these sighting techniques in any order and work back and forth between them as you make your drawing more and more correct. Let's take a look at each of these to see how sighting helps us make our drawings more accurate. Proportion is the size of part of something compared to its whole. We will hold the tip of our pencil at the edge of one object and slide our thumb to the opposite edge. This gives us a unit of measurement for the width of the pear. Keeping my thumb held at that unit, I will turn my arm and compare the width to the height. Since the pear is taller, it takes 1 1/3 width units to reach the top. This gives us the proportion of the pear. The height is 1 1/3 times bigger than the width. Start with the shorter unit. In this case, I compared the shorter width to the longer height of the pear. To transfer these proportions to our drawing, we must first start with a gesture. A gesture is important because it gives us something to measure against. Now we can apply the proportions we learned in life to our drawing. The proportions measured 1 unit wide to 1 1/3 unit tall. I need to make my drawing this ratio. Whatever the width of our gesture is, becomes the unit we measure our drawing with. I will turn my hand and measure the 1 1/3 units up and make a mark. Then I will correct my gesture to match the proportion from life. Now our pear is the correct proportion, and we can use this as a basis to make the rest of the drawing correct. Next, we can use sighting to understand scale. Scale is the size of one object compared to a different object. We use the same unit we started with to get the scale of the other objects. I go back to the width of the pear and use that to measure the width and height of the apple. The apple is 1 unit wide and 1 1/4 units high at its tallest. Then we can measure the widest and tallest points of the other objects, always basing it off of our original unit. Notice the rest of our objects are slightly smaller in scale than the width of the pear. By going back to the original unit each time, we can make all of the objects the correct scale to the pear. Now I can correct the scale in my drawing, just like I did with proportion. Sighting also allows us to hold our pencil up as a horizontal or vertical line to check how objects are aligned with each other. Here, the bottom of the pear aligns with the middle of the orange. The top of the orange aligns with the lower third of the pear. The top of the pear is below the apple. The top of the lime aligns with the middle of the apple. The top of the orange aligns with the middle of the lime, and so on. Understanding these alignments helps us place all of the objects correctly in relationship to each other. Each time we find an alignment, we can bring that down to our drawing and make adjustments so that our drawing becomes closer and closer to what we see in life. We can also hold our pencil up to check the specific angles between objects. Knowing the angle from the bottom of the pear to the bottom of the apple helps us understand the relationships between each object. We often subconsciously straighten objects up when we draw, so checking angles helps us avoid drawing everything straight and flat. We can also check the angle of a specific object. If I hold my pencil through the center of the pear, I can see it's tipped at an angle. When we observe angles in life, We bring them down to apply them to our drawing and make it more accurate to what we see. Sighting also helps us see negative shapes. To understand what a negative shape is, we have to know what a positive shape is first. Positive shapes are all of the tangible objects we can see in our image. Negative shapes are the shapes we make from the space around the positive shapes. If we hold our pencil up and connect positive shapes together, the triangular shapes between them are negative shapes. Seeing these negative shapes helps us understand how each object is related to each other. Once we find a negative shape in life, we can compare it to the negative shape in our drawing to see if they match each other. If not, we can make corrections to make it closer to what we see. Negative space is a similar idea. Negative space is simply the space around all of the positive shapes. We can look carefully at the negative space between each object and measure it. We can compare those measurements with our original unit and make sure each object is spaced correctly from each other. Now let's do a drawing where we practice all of these sighting techniques. My first step is a gesture of the whole still life. A gesture won't be perfect, but that's okay. Sighting will help us correct it. Then I will measure the width of the pear and compare it to the height, and then adjust it so it's the correct proportion. I also check the angle of the pear to make sure it's tipping to the left. I work with light pencil strokes in the beginning so I can refine them as I go. Then I use the width unit of the pear to get the scale of the apple. I am checking alignments, angles, and negative shapes, and measuring scale and negative space as I make observations and adjust the drawing. I measure the negative space between the apple and the lime, comparing it back to the original width unit of the pear, and then make adjustments. Then, angles and alignments help me relate the lime and orange to each other. Notice the fruit in the middle was not correct in my gesture, but using alignments and angles helps me triangulate where it should actually be. You may notice your gesture was really inaccurate, and that's okay. The more you practice sighting, the better your initial observations will become. Angles and alignments help me find the correct placement for each object. Pay attention to cast shadows because they are objects that you can use sighting on to help you correct the drawing. As the drawing gets more accurate, I refine the shapes so they are more defined. Try this on your own. Get some simple objects around your house and make a still life. Then, draw a gesture and use all of these sighting techniques to make your drawing accurate to life. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to go to Drawsh.com for more information on these topics and many more. If you want to see more videos like this, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.